Hey folks, it's been a while since I made a video, so I thought I'd give a quick update on what I've been doing, basically. So, the curse convinced me to play some PoE. I haven't touched this game in about 6 years, and a lot has changed, so just kind of going through some of my thoughts on the game, how I feel, why I haven't played the game for 6 years, my experiences with this league, and so on. And also a little bit about the character and going forward the next couple months, what I'm going to be doing. So yeah, let's jump into it. In the background, we have my, I guess we'll say finished character. No character is really finished in PoE, but we have a T17 fortress map with 4 Risk Scarabs and Abyss. So this is Quad Risk Abyss. Pretty, high level content. This character basically does like all the mods, doesn't really matter. But yeah, let's jump into it. So I guess my experiences with PoE after not playing for 6 years, as I said, a lot has changed. Back in the day when I played PoE, I would always min-max really hard, farm multiple mirrors in a league, and then you could kind of put together a build that could pretty much destroy any content the game had to offer. So it didn't really matter a whole lot beyond that point. There wasn't that much min-maxing. Now it seems like the limits of min-maxing are, I mean, kind of limitless, really. Like you can spend easily 20, 30 mirrors or more on a character. It gets kind of crazy. But yeah, that's kind of the way the game works. It's always kind of been going in that direction where the min-maxing potential is just insane. And that's one of the things I kind of like and also don't like about PoE compared to like last Epoch, for example, is there's a lot of opportunities to really min-max your character in the way that you want. Most characters playing a given build in PoE are going to look different in some way. There's a lot of little options to personalize, there's different budget options. Given infinite money, there's basically infinite ways that you could play a given build. And I think that's really cool. I think the problem, though, my biggest issue with PoE, this was the case in the past and still the case, is I feel like PoE just doesn't really respect your time. And I think it's actually gotten worse over the 6 years I haven't played the game. Even as far as like min-maxing, when you play Economy League, like I'm currently playing Standard, I started off this league, as I said, doing Duo SSF with the Curse. So I didn't get the league start economy game, which is a huge deal in PoE, getting the early economy game. And yeah, that's one of the things is like 1 or 2 hours on day one of a league is worth like 10 or more hours on like day two, three, etc. Like the amount of importance going extremely hard early on in a PoE league, economy wise, is hard to understate, but it's like, I guess, overstate. It makes a huge difference. Like, you really need to go hard early on if you want to win the economy. And I think that there's a lot of really sketchy incentives with the way min-maxing works in PoE now because of how crazy unobtainable some items are for the majority of players. Like, you're talking noobs might be farming, if they're lucky, a few divine a day, and then you have items that are literally worth like thousands of divines. You could be farming like as hard as you want as a noob. Maybe you're not like playing efficiently, maybe your character's not that strong, maybe you can't afford to juice properly, all that stuff. Like you're just not getting anywhere. And from my understanding, it seems like a lot of the super high end of the game, there's a lot of like exploiting and abuse and stuff like that, like RMT or whatever, even the first few days of the league. As I said, noobs are struggling to farm a few divines. You can buy like on a minimum wage amount of money in like, US minimum wage 10, $15, you could buy like 40, 50, 60, 100 divines and then just snowball your character from there. Like there's just such a huge incentive to do that that it feels it kind of like to me it tarnishes a little bit of the experience. Especially like you're playing trade or whatever. SSF still has, its place. I don't think that's the case, but like it just kind of tarnishes the experience that you can so easily bypass it, and so many people do. Even like, you juice up your character early on, and then people just sell it. There's like the mirror crafting situation. A lot of, big name streamers have talked about that being a big problem. Is people spend a bunch of money early on, they make stuff, and then they do that to like print money. So yeah, like there's a lot of sketchy stuff going on at the highest level. Uh, and just in general, a lot of the profitable mechanics I find they're very tedious. They're not very fun to interact with. One example of this is like the village mechanic, King's March. So I thought this was pretty cool at first, but the further you go on, like this is the type of mechanic where it just feels like friction in the game for the sake of it. Uh, it's one of many examples where they're trying to keep your eyeballs as glued to the game as possible. So, just example, you put your I'll just quickly leave the map, show what I'm talking about. We'll just go to King's March real quick. So just as an example, you have your mappers and your shippers, this whole mechanic. So I can send a shipment here, load up some stuff, do something like this, and then maybe I set sail. Here we go, the shipment. If you step away from the computer, like this, see the timer, this countdowns while you're away. The problem is like a lot of these, as soon as you go away, within like 5 minutes, it gets interrupted and it will not continue until you come back and interact. And even if like the same thing happens here where you have 3 of these systems active at the same time, if one of them breaks, they get interrupted by some random encounter, then you need to like click OK to continue and it won't do anything. Like this whole AFK mechanic, it's not even truly AFK. They're just trying to like you're checking back every so often. Does anybody want to buy your item? Does anybody want to like or any of your mechanics stopped because of some interruption? They just want to keep you checking in on the game. You need to like farm the gold so that you can keep these mechanics going so that you have your passive profit. It's just stuff like this that makes you feel obligated to play PoE. It makes it feel like a job. Those all are things that made me quit initially 6 years ago, and there's still frustrations. So enough of the ranting, I guess. I have a lot of stuff to complain about, but there's also a lot of positives. So, like I said, I think that the endgame having so much option of how you can play the game, there's like completely different things that you can do, and you can build your character around the things that you want to do, and then play content that kind of jives with that. So like you can play heist where you go into these things and you don't even really kill much. You're just running in as fast as possible and trying to like grab high value things and escape. Or you can do like the what do you call it? The trial thing where you're going in, you complete the trial, and then you have some like upgrade shrine at the end. Like you can do that. You can do like delving, which is kind of like last Epoch's monolith a little bit, and you can try and see how far you can go and make profit that way. You can just be a crafter, you can be a trader, you can, whatever you want. There's so many different ways to play the game, and even like mapping, which is what I'm doing now. You have all this control over how you customize your map experience, and I think this is really cool. There's a lot of complexity, a lot of like, redundancies and stuff like this, but I really like this. This was not really in the game when I last played, and it's cool. You're just changing your stuff. You get bored of one thing, you switch it up, and you can kind of fine tune. Like there's opportunities here to like find strategies and min max and like, like here's a new tech of like how you can make more profit that nobody's found. And because the juice in this game is tied to the economy as well, if you find a cool strat, like you can profit big time off of that. And I do think that's kind of cool. I think the downside though of the juicing being tied to the economy is that means that if your character is not strong and whatever mechanic that you want to do is mostly being done by like either groups like party play or strong characters, if you can't either like kill the mechanic quick enough like breach, or you can't you're not strong enough like the alpha strategy, or even the abyss can be a little hard for some characters. If you can't maximize a mechanic, then your juice is basically wasted. You need to get value out of the juice because the price of the juicing is based on the people who best utilize it most of the time. So there's like a huge snowball effect in PoE where like if you are really good at the game, you know your stuff, you get a good start, all that other, whatever you put the time in early on, it snowballs and you're like super rich, you just get richer. The game is great. Like you're doing all this stuff, you're having a good time. If you are a little far behind, you're newer to the game, you don't have all the info, you start late, whatever, you're playing a much harder version of the game. And it's, because of the whole economy thing. And then there's also the whole like flipping, there's price fixing, there's like the synchronous trade needing to go to people's hideout. Like all this stuff I just really, really dislike. And basically my whole experience, I've avoided trade as much as possible. Like this character I'm currently playing is probably worth like, I don't know, 4 or 5 mirrors or something. It's like crazy character. And this whole process, I didn't do any crafting, I didn't do any flipping. I literally just would like throw items in a tab, list it for some amount of divine orbs. I didn't sell anything for less than a divine, because just interacting with trade in this game is such a pain in the ass. I tried to avoid it as much as humanly possible, and somehow we made it here. I did do a bit of gambling. I made that previous video showing the mirror card gamble. That's when I was going to quit the league. At that point, it was probably worth like 2-ish mirrors of like various currency and gear. I did the gamble. I made another 2-ish roughly, and then I probably farmed another 1 or 2 mirrors since then. So overall, for my first sleep back, I think it did go pretty well. I did a lot of the mechanics. I got 37 challenges. 40 probably would have been pretty easy for this character, but I just couldn't be bothered. And yeah, that's where we're at. Let's do the boss, because why not? And then we'll talk a little bit more about the character. There we go. T17 quad risk boss. Our Merc actually didn't die. Pretty cool. Yeah, so before we jump into the POB, I'll just talk about my Merc, because the Merc's not in POB. But this is what we have. I don't have the weapon because it'll just die to reflect. But yeah, this is our Merc. We have the Doriani. This has kind of been like big elephant in the room for this league with the whole mercenary theme. We have negative 200 lightning resist on our Merc with Doriani, so everything we're fighting has negative 200. We also have enemies deal 10% less damage, take 10% more damage. Overall, this is just like, a bot to make us stronger, gives us haste. This kind of has some like D2 vibes with your mercenary, just doing stuff. I'm not really a huge fan of like gearing up another character, but to each their own. Kind of cool. So yeah, let's jump over to the character, talk about it a little bit. We have our POB. So this is our POB. This is the character we put together. I thought it was pretty cool. I'll put this link in the description if anyone wants to check it out. I don't know if I'll be bothering to min-max it a little further. In hindsight, there's a lot of improvements I could have made. I ended up sort of going halfway between a block build and a like non-block ES stacking whatever. Wait, do I actually not have a jewel equipped? Hold on, am I crazy? Oh, that's awkward. Yeah, my in-game character actually has an empty jewel socket too. Nice. Well, go me. I've been running around with an empty jewel socket. Anyway, kind of besides the point. So in hindsight, there's some other ways you could have built it. You could do the small clusters, you could do whatever other. It seems like min-maxing in this game, a lot of it kind of revolves around the clusters. They end up being crazy strong late game. You spend probably as much currency into your passive tree as you do in your actual gear, it seems like. But yeah, I basically with this, you just want to get a little bit of everything. There's a lot of stats you want, like Rage, for example. So you can either do Rage with Megalomaniac, that's what I did, or you can get the Rage in one of these large clusters, and then you can just go into the these ones here. They have a lot of really good stats. It just makes a huge difference. You can see like one of these nodes is like 3.5% DPS and how much, like 1% ES. So each one of these nodes is actually huge. So if you can get more of these, the character just gets way stronger. Let's see here, we have 75% suppress. You can put tattoos down here to get to 100. I just didn't bother because I never really needed the survivability. Nothing really kills me, at least nothing I did. But yeah, you can easily get to 100. those are expensive, so I didn't bother. But yeah, you can do it. And otherwise, the block thing, as I said, is probably not the best way to do this. You just go into more ES. I like have, for example, this shield recover ES on block. This would be great if I had a bunch of block, but I don't. It's not super optimal, as I said, but you know, that's the character. And what are we at? 2500 int, not bad. You could potentially get to close to 5000 if you were like perfectly min maxed, but I'm not going to go that far with this. So yeah, this is where we're at. As I said, I'll put the link in the description. And for those of you wondering, I haven't quit Last Epoch. I had a few people asking about that. I am still planning to play Last Epoch. The main issue, I'll probably do like a follow-up on this, is like, it's just timing is really, really bad for me. I had booked a vacation for leaving August 20th. And this was like, I booked this like way back in February or something. And the problem is that I'm leaving one day before season 3 starts. So it's really hard for me to be motivated to put a lot of, you know, time and effort into Last Epoch when I'm basically missing the entire first few weeks of the league, just, you know, by luck of the draw, bad timing. So I still will play season 3. Probably put a build out, maybe try and like theorycraft something before I leave. But yeah, just don't expect me to be streaming at league start because I will be in a different country, halfway across the world. Hopefully, getting some nice weather. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much all I have for today. You know, it's kind of just like a rant video overall. Obviously, being a COF player, somebody who doesn't like trade, this is a big reason why I kind of like Last Epoch a lot more than PoE, and that's why I haven't really had a whole lot of interest in playing PoE the last few years. And I just feel like if PoE had COF, it'd be pretty great. You know, I'd be a happy camper. A lot of the complaints would be gone. There still is a huge lack of quality of life that Last Epoch just, you know, absolutely crushes. That's like their big thing. But anyway, you know, just enough rambling. As always, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.